Okay, so the purpose of this video is to demonstrate the auto-looper workaround functionality for the Korg MicroSampler keyboard. Unfortunately, Korg didn't include an auto-loop function in the keyboard. Kind of mysterious and frustrating, but luckily some pretty clever users and people who are online visiting the Korg forums have figured out a pretty good little workaround. It's not too hard to set up. It does take a little bit of setup, but nothing too serious. And it's very functional. It's very good. So I'm going to show you how to go ahead and do that. Okay, so the first step that I've gone ahead and taken off camera is just to record a kind of a 2-bar beatbox kind of deal where I'm going to use that as a metronome for what I'm doing. So you can hear that going on there. The basic way that we accomplish the auto-looper workaround is we're going to be using the pattern sequencer. So what we're going to be doing is pre-recording kind of empty samples, no sound samples into the pattern sequencer, and then we're going to get the pattern sequencer rolling, and we're going to set the sampling mode to note on, so that when those empty samples that we've pre-recorded, when the note comes on, that's going to trigger the sampling. And if the sampler is in one-shot mode, very important that it be in one-shot mode, that's going to go ahead when the sequence ends and comes back around to the point where the note's being sampled, it's just going to automatically go ahead and play what you've just recorded, which is very much like an RC50 or these kinds of looping devices might do. There's going to be a very small gap at the very end of the sample, but I think it's a pretty small compromise for a pretty good functionality that you get out of it. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at how you do that. So, I'm going to go ahead and get my pattern going. We're going to enter record mode in the pattern sequencer. Now, what we want to do, we want to record a note that is just slightly shorter than the total length of the pattern that we're dealing with. So I'm using a 2-bar pattern right now. You can do much longer patterns, but this is just to kind of keep things short and simple here for this demonstration. 2 bars. So what we're going to do, we're going to get the pattern sequencer going, and we're going to press down on the note at the 1-1 beat. You can see it'll be displayed over here. So when the sequence rolls over and begins again, we're going to press, and then when we get almost to the very last of the last beat, we're going to let off. So the note that's stored in the key here is going to be ever so slightly less than the 2 bars, which is in the sequence there. So that's what we're doing. We'll get the sequence going, enter record mode. We're going to watch for the 1-1 beat to come back around again. And that's it. Let's go ahead and do it for a few more so we can use them. Okay, that's pretty much it. Now you could do the same thing if you want to be really precise about it. You could actually you could program these notes in a kind of like a MIDI program, and you could import them into the keyboard using your USB interface and all this kind of stuff. You really achieve some precision there, and it's probably less tedious in terms of the time that you spend doing this. But I'm just kind of showing you the basic techniques, so you can take it from there. So I've got I now have 3 slots that are prepared to auto loop when I get the pattern sequencer going. We could do the same thing all the way up the keyboard if we wanted to. We could prepare all these guys and just have 36 different sample slots potentially for use. One thing that's important to keep in mind, we want to have an empty keyboard. We don't want any samples recorded anywhere up here, because one thing that's kind of unique about the microsampler is if I have a sample recorded on this button right here and there's nothing here, and I press this button is going to access this sample and it's going to play it, but it's going to play it pitched down and kind of tempoed down a little bit, which is very confusing and kind of unmusical for what we're doing right here. So just go ahead and start with a clean slate. That's a good way to go. We're going to go ahead and get our pattern sequencer going. Now, to set up, you want to be in one-shot mode. When you go into sampling mode, let's look at the settings here. This is kind of important too. So rates whatever, it doesn't matter. Mono, stereo, it doesn't really matter. Now, trigger. It's very, very important that it be in note on mode. That's kind of the key to the workaround we're dealing with here. So make sure you're in note on mode. Make sure you're in one-shot mode over here. And then Well, it doesn't really matter, I don't think, because it's working off of the pre-recorded note, but I have this set to 2 bars, just in case, so exit that. Now, one thing about when you're in note on sampling mode, you're going to want to hit the sampling button twice. The first time you hit it, it's going to turn green. Nothing's going to happen. The second time you hit it, it's going to start flashing yellow. Now, when it's flashing yellow, it means that it's waiting for the note on to occur to begin recording. So whenever that 1-1 beat comes around, say we're on this key right here, whenever that pre-recorded note that we recorded comes in on the pattern, the empty one, it's going to start the sampler going, and it's going to be recording what we're actually doing there. So we want to make sure we're note on. Let's just go ahead and see it in action. Yeah, you can see this is a modified microsampler. I went ahead and opened it up, and I kind of soldered in a standard keyboard sustain pedal here so that I could do hands-free operation. You can find instructions for how to do that with pictures and everything on the korg forums as well. But here we go. So the pattern sequencer is going. We selected this as our slot we're going to use. I'm going to hit that once. It's turning green. When I hit it again, it's going to turn yellow, and it'll be waiting for the note on. So there it is, and I'm waiting. Here we go. And you can see it's just going ahead and looping. Now, we'll move on to the next one. We'll do the same thing. Green, yellow, here we go. Yellow, and here we go. So you can see that it looped automatically. Now you'll notice this last one here, it didn't loop the first time around. It had to. It finished recording, and then it went through 2 bars, and then it began to play. I suspect what happened was when I pre-recorded this note, I probably held the note down longer than the initial 2 bars. So that's what happened. So you want to be careful. You want to make sure that when you're holding that down to prepare things, that you don't exceed the length of the pattern itself, or you're going to have to wait for the pattern to roll over once before the auto loop workaround is going to take effect. But that's pretty functional, man, and you could set this up, like I said, all the way down the keyboard. It's pretty awesome. You're going to have up to 36 different slots you can loop with there. So I hope that helps clarify things. And when I post the video, I'll go ahead and set links up with the forum where you can get some detailed written instructions and whatnot. Alrighty, guys.